This is Christine Clapp from Spoken with Authority, and today I'm joined with three of my expert coaches, Lisa, Lynn, and Michelle, and we are going to explore sight, eye contact. It's one of the areas of professional presence that many of our clients have struggled with as they made the transition from in-person speaking to speaking in a virtual context. We're going to do a round robin here and get some advice from, we'll go Lynn, Michelle, Lisa, and then I will finish up and have a discussion about how we can all do better with eye contact when we are on Zoom or other video conference platforms. So Lynn, take it away.
Thanks. I think what I've learned over these past few months is that you're going to have different sight for different situations. So if you're presenting and you're presenting a specific type of information and it is a presentation, you want to be prepared to look directly into the camera, wherever that camera is on your device. Practice, as we always say, and just keep looking at that camera and be comfortable with the fact that you're not being able to scan the room. As a presentation goes on, and especially if there's information that you need to share and you're sharing a screen and you're giving different ideas that you want people to take in, then you need to let yourself have permission to not always look at the camera, to look at the gallery view and look around and see that person seems disengaged. That person looks confused. I need to reach out to that person to the degree that you can do that, because of course, obviously with the larger webinar, there's only so much of that you can do. There's also the challenge of looking away to look at the chat function on the side rail if you've enabled that. So because there can be some rich conversation going on there with people who don't necessarily want to identify themselves, raise their hands, or they're having some conversation kind of between themselves, but you want to bring that in. So you need to look away. You need to read that and say, just a minute. I see Ian. Yes, that's a good idea. Let's talk about it a little more, and then turn your attention back to the main camera. And the other thing I would say that I am struggling with myself is that you have to figure out what kind of chair, where you're going to be sitting, and how you're going to be sitting. If it is a longer webinar, and I mean, I've been in webinars now that have been some hours, you want a comfortable chair, but sometimes comfortable chairs don't give us the kind of stance that we are accustomed to recommending for our clients. Chairs, they swivel, they are comfortable. And after a while, you may need to do that because this is taxing to be in perfectly erect posture all the time, and you're not standing, so you can't even engage all of the trunk of your body and all of your muscles to utilize that good stance and give yourself some support. So those are things that you need to think about going into this. That's what I would say about the idea of eye contact, when and when not, and when to be okay with it.
Thanks so much, Lynn. And I totally agree with that notion. Just like you would in person, when one person is talking, you would turn your attention and look at them, and you have to do that for the chat box and to look at the boxes. So I love the idea of there are times to look in different places. So thank you so much for the insights. Michelle, tell us about your best advice for clients on sight.
Yeah, I want to explore the interpersonal aspect of sight a little bit. Although we're in a different form, we're now virtual, kind of the meaningfulness of communication, those rules are still at play. There are still 6 activities that happen in every communication interaction. Even right now, you're the main presenter, Christine, you are the moderator. You're thinking about me, I'm thinking about you, and we're thinking about our image of each other. And all of that evolves over time as relationships deepen, and it goes both ways. So it's 6 events. And also, we're always wondering what's happening, what's going to happen, and how am I being treated? That's always at play when we're talking about any form of engagement. And we know, again, with conversations are anchored in mutual purpose. So making sure that we present ourselves as engaged is crucial for, again, anchoring and focusing our attention, making sure that the presenter or the moderator knows that we're present, so that people feel respected in a communication interaction. As Lynn talked about, maybe stretching, get it a little antsy. We know that movement facilitates alertness and attention. It's just unnatural to be in one place for an extended period of time. So even if you have to step up and stretch, we can still make sure that we present ourselves as engaged by just having a picture that shows a little life and liveliness. And just like that, you don't know what I'm doing, Christine. Stretching, doing what I have to do to kind of make sure I stay alert, and I am back. And hopefully you didn't feel like I totally disconnected, and that I'm still in the conversation, committed to mutual purpose with you. So I just wanted to offer those tips, that whatever you do, make sure that your interaction shows that you're anchored and engaged in mutual purpose.
Thanks, Michelle. I love that example of your photo. And I do think it's a best practice of having a photo of you in the video conference platform if you are not showing video. And I think that it's perfectly okay, just like you mentioned, to hop off video. If you cannot be a good, engaged listener, participant, speaker with your video on, turn it off. And sometimes it's necessary just because it's getting glitchy, because Lynn was talking about earlier today how she and another family member are jockeying for bandwidth today, and you might need to put it on video or on off video and onto your photo so that you can be heard more effectively. So I think that's really great advice, and use that picture. I love the picture you showed, because it was one that was you in an action shot, a big smile. It was really great, and a really great example of the type of picture you could use to really up your presence when your video is not on. So thank you.
Welcome.
Lisa, what about you? How do you recommend that we deal with eye contact in virtual situations?
I guess two things are on my mind at this point. One of them connects, I think, to what Michelle was talking about, which is to be real, that it's okay to be real. I guess that's a recurring theme for me, is that these settings that we're in are a little bit unnatural. And so I want us not to feel like we have to pretend that they're anything different. And so I won't be perfect. My posture won't always be perfect. And I do want to maintain eye contact, but in the same way that we would tell presenters in a big room full of people, how long is comfortable? Sustained eye contact with any one person in the room would be uncomfortable after a certain point. And so we hold our gaze, we find somebody else to look at, we work the room a little bit. So I think accepting that the same thing is going to be true. For me to stare dead into the camera through everything you say and everything I say, you wonder almost if my screen has frozen and if I'm still there. So I would say just keeping it natural and knowing that eye contact is going to be a coming and going thing, and do it the way that you would. Again, it's a real interaction with real people, even if they're not in the room with you. And the other thing that's on my mind about sight, maybe because we look at our own situations, I have to move around a lot. So sometimes I'm in this spot, sometimes I'm in another spot. And so what works one time doesn't necessarily work the next time. Maybe right now I'm in front of my great big monitor and my camera's over here and my lighting is a certain way. And so my eye contact works in one way. When I'm set up a little differently, things will be different. If I need a script, if I have to work from, not a script, but my notes for what I need to say, I'm going to do things differently. So one recommendation that I found works for me is just to record myself doing a little snippet of whatever I know is coming up. So I'll say, I know I have to speak in this meeting. I need my notes. How am I going to use them? In one instance, I had my big monitor. I wanted them on the screen. I did a split screen so I could have perfect eye contact and be glancing at my notes, and my people were here. That all kind of worked. In other scenarios, I'm going to take my notes and I'm going to lean them up on my screen right here because that's just what works better. So just to play with different things and to know that I can't really check my own eye contact without recording myself and seeing how it goes. So those are two tips I would share for being as prepared as we can be, but also being flexible and trying to keep it real.
Thanks, Lisa. I love the suggestion on notes, and it's something that we talk about a lot, is how do you place your notes so that you can improve your sight, because it is really an important element of it. You want to make sure that your notes are not down on your lap or down low in a way that's going to make people see the top of your head whenever possible. Put them in a place where you can make a quick glance away. Maybe it is another screen. Maybe it is taped on the wall behind you. Maybe it's on Post-it notes that you put on the computer like a peacock if there are certain points or questions or pieces of information you want to provide in a meeting. That could be a way to do it. But to think about how you can reduce the time when people are seeing the top of your head, because that is a barrier to that rapport that we get from making eye contact. And another thing that our coach, Dr. Miller, had mentioned in the past, and she's not here today to share it herself, so I wanted to reemphasize, if you do need to look at notes, just tell people so that they are not thrown off by it. If you are in a town hall meeting and you're testifying, you could say, I really appreciate your time. I'm so excited to testify. Because there are certain things that I wanted to bring up, I'm going to refer to my notes to make sure that I'm concise and I hit everything that's really important to me. And then you could read off your script if you need to, because you have a really important time crunch. Or if you're in an interview or you're in a meeting and you're listening to a client, just so you know, I'm going to take some notes as you're talking. I'm going to be writing down. So if you see me looking down, still listening, and I'm just making sure that I don't miss anything that you tell me. So just being overt with people and letting them know, because if they look up and they see you doing this, in one-on-one situation, they can see you writing notes on a notepad, or they can see you referring to the notes that you prepared ahead of time. But in a virtual setting, they don't know if you're looking at your phone, if you are doing something entirely different. And being overt with people, I think, helps with that confusion or the miscommunication that might happen if you don't just let them know where you're looking and why you're doing it. Were there any other thoughts on sight? I guess one thing that I would note is I've noticed that folks who use two screens, sometimes they have an issue where they're doing this because they're looking at one screen and they're looking to the side. So what I would recommend is, whenever possible, make sure that you are sitting with your body facing the webcam that you're using, and that you're looking at the other screen out of just tilting your head or moving your eyes, rather than moving your body. Because in a one-on-one situation, in a meeting, or if you're having an interpersonal communication, you would want to move your nose, chin, belly button together to look at a different person in the room so that you can establish great sight. But if you have dual monitors, just looking over and back or glancing over and back is a fine way to handle it, because you do want your body to be facing the camera so that listeners get the experience of having that body language that goes with effective eye contact. Any other last thoughts based on our conversation? Any other things that you wanted to add?
I guess the only other thing that I would want to follow up with is a comment that Lynn made about stance. And we know sometimes you don't always have the camera position just right every time, but you want to make sure you don't have the floating head look to where you look just like a floating head. And as you can see, all of us are at least a little below the shoulders, and it allows you to present with that view of a strong stance in the absence of a tall, erect stance when standing.
Absolutely. I think it makes you appear so much more present
Mm-hmm.
when you have that, chest up view, so you get a little bit more of your body. I think it really does help make you appear more there. And I think lighting helps too. Like if you don't have decent lighting, you look shadowy, and again, you don't look as present, which is really important to build rapport, and I think goes along and supplements what you're doing in terms of eye contact, to have that connection that's so important when we're communicating. Thoughts or suggestions on stance or sight for our listeners today? Well, Lynn and Michelle and Lisa, you are valued members of the Spoken with Authority community. Thank you so much for being on our panel of experts today to talk about sight. So our listeners, our clients, anyone who's working on their virtual communication skills can up their game, increase their online presence, and continue building rapport even when we are not in person, but we're still working in a virtual context. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.